Picture the most dangerous animal in Africa. You probably thought of a lion, maybe a crocodile, maybe even a hippo. But there's an animal that most people completely overlook. An animal that can rip a leopard apart. An animal that runs one of the most brutal and sophisticated criminal organizations in the entire animal kingdom. And it has the face of a nightmare. Today we're talking about the mandrill, and by the end of this video, I promise you, you will never look at a monkey the same way again. Most people have seen a mandrill exactly once in their life, at a zoo behind thick glass, probably eating fruit and looking mildly confused. And that experience gives you absolutely zero understanding of what this animal actually is. The mandrill is the largest monkey on Earth. Not ape. Monkey. That's an important distinction, and we'll come back to why that matters. Adult males can weigh up to 77 pounds, stand nearly 3 feet tall, and they are built like a heavyweight fighter who also happens to be absolutely furious at the world. But here's what most people miss. It's not the size that should scare you. It's not even the teeth, though we are absolutely going to talk about the teeth. What should terrify you about the mandrill is how smart it is, how organized it is, and how completely, ruthlessly efficiently it has designed its entire existence around dominance. Keep that word in mind. Dominance. Because everything about the mandrill, the colors, the fangs, the social structure, all of it comes back to that one concept. Let's start with the obvious thing. The face. The mandrill has a face that looks like someone bet a graphic designer they couldn't make a primate terrifying. Bright red stripe running down the nose, ridged blue skin on either side, a yellow beard. If you saw this face in the wild, your brain's threat detection system would immediately short-circuit because it genuinely doesn't look real. But here's the wild part. Those colors aren't a warning to predators. They're a message to other mandrills. The more dominant a male is, the brighter and more saturated those colors become. When a male mandrill is in peak physical condition at the top of his social hierarchy, those reds get redder. Those blues get more vivid. And the other mandrills see that and they know. They know without a single fight who they are dealing with. It's basically a biological status symbol. A Rolex on a face. Except instead of telling time, it's telling every other mandrill in a 2-mile radius, "Do not test me." And if somehow another mandrill doesn't get the message, that's where the teeth come in. This is the part where I need you to just stop for a second and actually visualize this. A mandrill's canine teeth, the fangs, can grow up to 2.5 inches long. 2.5 inches. That is longer than the canines of most lions. Let that sit with you for a moment. A monkey. With teeth longer than a lion's, and unlike a lion, which has to knock you down and bite through your neck, a mandrill can grab you with both hands and tear. These animals have been documented injuring leopards, actual leopards, badly enough that the leopard retreats. A leopard, which is a perfectly engineered killing machine, decides it's not worth it. Now imagine being on the wrong side of a dominant mandrill male who feels threatened. The bite force, the grip strength, the sheer aggression. Wildlife researchers who study these animals in the field don't approach dominant males. Full stop. You observe from a distance. You use binoculars. You respect the boundary. One researcher described a dominant mandrill male charging at her vehicle and leaving dents. Dents. In a vehicle, with its hands. Okay, so we've established that a single mandrill is genuinely terrifying. Now let me tell you about what happens when they group up. Mandrills live in groups called hordes. Not troops. Hordes. And the name is accurate. These aren't small groups of 10 or 15 animals sitting in a tree grooming each other. Mandrill hordes in the rainforests of Central Africa can contain up to 800 individuals, 800 mandrills, moving together through the forest like an army. These are the largest groups of non-human primates ever recorded on Earth, and they don't wander randomly. They have roots. They have strategy. Scouts move ahead of the group. Dominant males position themselves at the edges to defend against threats. Females cluster in the center with juveniles. This is coordinated movement. This is tactical thinking. Scientists who have tracked these hordes say the sound of 800 mandrills moving through forest is something that stays with you. You hear them before you see them. The ground vibrates, trees shake, and then you see them. A wave of color and muscle moving through the undergrowth, and the entire forest around them goes completely silent. Because every other animal in that forest knows. Whatever the horde wants, the horde gets. Here's where it gets even more interesting, because the mandrill's social structure is genuinely one of the most complex and sophisticated systems in the animal kingdom. At the top of a mandrill horde is the dominant male. And his position isn't just about being the biggest or the strongest. It's about maintaining a political coalition. That's not an exaggeration. Researchers have observed dominant male mandrills form alliances with other high-ranking males, manage conflicts within the group, and even appear to make calculated decisions about when to challenge a rival and when to back down. Females aren't passive either. Female mandrills have their own complex hierarchy. They form long-term social bonds with relatives. They remember who helped them. They remember who didn't. And they pass social status down through family lines. A female mandrill born into a high-ranking family has advantages that follow her for her entire life. Sound familiar? The dominant male gets access to the most food, the safest sleeping spots, and the majority of reproductive opportunities. But here's the fascinating part. The males who are dominant aren't always the physically biggest. Sometimes a slightly smaller male who is better at forming alliances, better at reading social dynamics, better at timing. That male will outcompete a bigger, stronger rival. They're not just strong, they're strategic. And that combination, strength plus intelligence plus organization, is exactly what makes them so effective. And so scary. You might have assumed mandrills eat fruit and leaves. And yes, they do eat fruit and leaves. They also eat insects, roots, eggs, and small vertebrates. And here's the part that tends to surprise people. Mandrills hunt. Not occasionally, not accidentally. They actively pursue and kill prey. Small mammals, lizards, birds. If it fits in the food category and it's catchable, a mandrill will catch it. Researchers have even documented mandrills eating other primates, and the hunting isn't random. When a large horde moves through an area, smaller animals essentially have no escape. The horde flushes prey from every direction. It's collaborative. It's coordinated. Think about what that means. You have an animal that is strong enough to injure a leopard, smart enough to form political alliances, organized enough to move in groups of 800, and omnivorous enough to eat almost anything it encounters. That is not a monkey. That is a force of nature wearing a monkey's body. Remember earlier, I said the colors on a mandrill's face are about dominance? That goes further than the face. Male mandrills also have brightly colored rear ends, vivid reds, blues, and purples. Now I know what you're thinking. And yes, this is a real thing. And yes, it looks exactly as absurd as it sounds. But here's why it matters. When the horde is moving through dense forest, through undergrowth so thick you can barely see 2 feet in any direction, the bright colors on a mandrill's rear end act as a visual signal. Follow the color. Stay with the group. Don't get separated. It's a navigation system built into their biology. In terrain that would disorient most animals, mandrills have essentially evolved their own trail markers, built into their own bodies. That's the level of evolutionary refinement we're talking about here. Every single feature of this animal, the colors, the teeth, the social hierarchy, the group size, everything serves a purpose. Everything has been honed over millions of years into maximum efficiency. So why should you be terrified of mandrills? Not because they're going to show up in your backyard, not because they're an immediate threat to you personally. You should be terrified in the way that you should be terrified of anything that is genuinely, undeniably, completely better at surviving than most other things on the planet. The mandrill has solved problems that took human civilizations thousands of years to figure out. Coalition building, resource management, communication, tactical movement, and they did it in a rainforest, without language, without tools, with nothing but biology and millions of years of pressure. The mandrill doesn't look like what you think a dangerous animal looks like. It's colorful and strange and honestly kind of ridiculous looking. And that's exactly the point. The most effective predators aren't always the ones that look the part. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room is the one you weren't watching. If you want to go deeper on animals that are way more complex and terrifying than most people realize, there's a lot more where this came from on this channel. And if you learned something today that genuinely surprised you, drop it in the comments. I read more of those than you'd think.